Let's move to something a little bit more fun slash, I don't know, thought provoking. So a similar vein to the Stanley Cup Finals, with the NBA Finals now set, I think I have something of an interesting thought that I came through with when we see now it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder taking on the Indiana Pacers, two teams that seem to me to be largely built very similarly. Let me explain. On the one hand, with the Thunder, you had, I guess you could, yeah, it was a massive trade where they trade away Paul George and they bring in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and they build the entire team around him. You draft guys like Chet Holmgren and Williams, that sort of thing, right? You build around that guy and you make some moves. I mean, obviously they had Josh Giddey for a while there. That was that one didn't work out. But you go out and you get Isaiah Hartenstein and you get Alex Caruso, and you look at where they're at now. Elite stud team. None of those moves, though, I think, in my humble opinion, are the splash, big red news alert, breaking news, such and such player got traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, I guess you could say it was Shai, but here's the problem. On the other end of that trade was actually the quote-unquote splash move, which was the Clippers going to trade for Paul George. So the splash move in that particular case, well, look at the Clippers. Paul George is no longer on the team. So that tells you exactly how well that trade worked out for Los Angeles. On the losing end of the Western Conference, you had the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, you remember the Wolves, they had Karl Anthony Towns, they still have Anthony Edwards. They had a lot of young talent. Then they go out and they make a big trade and they get Rudy Gobert. Overall, I think that trade has worked out. I mean, you look at where the Utah Jazz are, they have a lot of picks and they might have a bright future, but right now, Utah is not very good. Rudy Gobert is thriving. Very good defensive player at the very least, joking aside. But the team can't quite get through. And last year, they would go out and they get Julius Randle, and what I thought was kind of a win-win trade for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But, they've made splashy moves. I think trading for Rudy Gobert and the package they gave up for him, I think that was something of a splashy move. And Julius Randle, similar deal, although, I guess at that point, maybe Julius Randle was not seen in the same splashiness as Karl Anthony Towns. Either way. On the other end of it, Indiana Pacers. Now, obviously, Tyrese Halliburton. That was a trade acquisition from the Sacramento Kings. You also have Pascal Siakam, who is a trade acquisition from the Toronto Raptors. They have drafted guys, but not exactly, they didn't draft in the same way that the Oklahoma City Thunder did, just frankly. They did, but they didn't. And that team is largely built upon kind of, I don't know, glue guys. Like, is Miles Turner a superstar? No. Pascal Siakam, a star. I don't know if you'd go as far as to say superstar. Tyrese Halliburton, that obviously turned out to be, I guess, similar to the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trade, where they find a guy in Sacramento and they bring him into a great situation, and he blossoms. Then you got the losers on that end, the New York Knicks. Now, their roster was pretty much entirely splash moves. Like, very little draft guy, develop guy. They get Jalen Brunson from the Mavs. They get Karl Anthony Towns from the Wolves. They get, oh my gosh, what's his name? Wasn't Josh Hart, I believe, in a trade? I could be wrong about that. They go out and they get a bunch of guys. And what's his name? Anunoby. That was a trade. They primarily pluck from other teams. And the thing is, all four of those teams, I think, very good teams. Very well built. Now, how does this all tie into the Pistons? Two of those teams that made the finals. The one primarily did it without major splash moves. Did they make moves for guys? Of course they did. Did they give up assets for guys? Of course they did. Nobody's denying that. Let's stop. And let's stop pretending that people are denying that. But did they also develop and wait on guys to reach their pinnacle? Yes, they did. They took on a very young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and slowly but surely developed him to be an MVP. Chet Holmgren was a very raw prospect coming out of Gonzaga. He even got hurt his rookie year. A couple of years later, he's a solid contributor to their team. Alex Caruso was a perfect fit defensively for them. They had to get rid of a Josh Giddey primarily because of some other stuff, but they made some somewhat risky moves, but they weren't, there was never a point, I think, where you said, oh my gosh, Oklahoma City, they won the offseason, right? There was never that point where there was like a day where Oklahoma City was just bam, 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 bam. Indiana, kind of similar deal. Outside of the Pascal Siakam, I can't even really think of a major move that they've made outside of just maintaining the guys they've had. It's just they didn't just throw everything out that they had. They found the guys that they like. They're glue guys. They're foundation guys who put on season tickets. And they just kind of, for lack of a better term, they let it cook. The one major team, however, and again, I'm not trying to dog on these teams. The Knicks, this is a perfect point. Brunson, free agent. Cat, trade. Hart, trade. OG, trade. Bridges, trade. That's a starting five. that's their starting lineup. None of it was a draft guy. None of it was, trade for a young prospect. None of it was, pick up a guy in free agency that nobody cares about and let it develop and let it prosper. I guess I say all of this to suggest there is a valid and there is a reasonable take that the Pistons don't have to make a splash move to become a championship contender in this league. They don't. I mean, if you really want to argue that the Alex Caruso deal last year for OKC was the splash move, you can argue that, and I could call you crazy. That's not a splash move. I don't even know if Alex Caruso has been an all-star. Maybe he's been an all-star once or twice, but he's not a splash move. He's not, going and trading for Zion Williamson. All right. He's not going and trading for Devin Booker or etc. That sort of thing. Not to say that those moves can't work out. Obviously, you have Pascal Siakam. That's a guy, again, who's a solid guy, but not, a super, not in that same echelon. I could go back and look it up, but I don't think Indiana had to give up massive, current young players that were, very well established to that point. The thing I just want to relay home to Pistons fans on both sides of this is to get mad that people want a big move, I think is kind of stupid. To get mad that people don't necessarily want a big move is equally stupid. Because ultimately, what everybody actually just wants is they want the right move. And all four of those Final Four teams told me there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to, do this. All four of those teams, frankly, they all four could have ended up in the finals. Maybe outside of Minnesota because they were just kind of getting mollywopped, but all four of them were good enough teams. I think we need to just, rather than say Pistons need a big splash or Pistons can't have a big splash, they need to just let it cook. They need to maintain. How about we just take a step back and say, okay, the free agency class, it kind of blows. So if they're going to make moves to change this roster, it's going to be in a trade. Let's just see what they do and evaluate. Right? Look, and here's the thing. Chauncey Billups, Allen Iverson, I know. I understand. Here's the thing. For all the Chauncey Billups, Allen Iversons of the world, you have the opposite where it does work out. Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics, right? But again, we're talking about not guys who are kind of albatrosses. And I don't know. Maybe it does work out if this is what happens. If the Pistons were to trade for, let's just say, Zion Williamson, that has Allen Iverson written all over it. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that it will work out that exact same way, but that's the feeling I get. The Pistons have a very interesting offseason ahead of them. They have the assets to make a move. They also have the young prospects to develop. It's not one shoe fit or one size fits all. You have a variety of things you can do. And if this NBA Finals has shown me anything, it's shown me that all of those paths are perfectly legitimate and perfectly, within successful, like bringing you to the next level, right? Obviously, I would love to see that Robin to Cade's Batman. Maybe that guy's on the team. And Jaden Ivey, maybe he's not. I don't know. Jaden Ivey, when he was healthy, was really good. I don't know. We'll see. But I guess when I watched the finals, when I watched the playoffs, I just thought to myself, it just kind of feels like all four of these paths, I'd be okay with the Pistons taking. Like, honest to goodness, I really would. If the Pistons went out and they just, started picking up superstar studs, if they go out, they get Zion, they get Devin Booker somehow, I'd be like, okay, I'm game with this. This could be fun. Or it might not work out. I don't know. Or if they say, you know what, we're going to be a little bit more conservative. We're going to pick up some guys. We're going to add some pieces. We're going to upgrade at this position. We're going to add a little bit more depth, and we're going to continue to develop guys. I'd also be like, you know what? I'm fine with that too. Like, maybe I'm just a homer, but I kind of just feel like I'm good with whatever we do as long as it corresponds to making the team better, which we'll only know once we see the actual moves that are getting made. Hey, YouTube, if you like clips like that, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We've got live shows every Tuesday night. Hope to see you there.